right, folks, welcome once again, everybody, to Irish Sports Daily Power Hour. I'm your host, Mike Frank, here with my good buddy, Jamie Uyeyama. We're going to have another great show here talking Irish football and probably some recruiting. We got a lot of questions we want to answer for you in the best way we can. Before we get going, I want to mention our sponsor, which is ESQ Clothing. And now's the time to refresh your wardrobe and add the perfect suit, sport coat, tuxedo, or casual jacket for fall. ESQ Master Tailors combine the next level craftsmanship with the finest fabrics to deliver a fit that's built just for you. Now with showrooms in both downtown Chicago and Winnetka, book your custom fitting and step into Chicago's finest. Mention ISD at your appointment. Receive 10% off your entire purchase. Once again, that is esqclothing.com. Also wanted to mention, if you are not a member of Irish Sports Daily, it's a great time to sign up. Go to the front page, click on the premium section. You can sign up for a premium subscription. Also, if you want to check us out on YouTube, the show is uploaded there every day. We also broadcast it live on YouTube. So if you're listening right now, I hope you enjoy it. You can come in to chat, ask questions, all that type of stuff. If you do come to our YouTube channel, we'd appreciate it if you subscribe and our content that will allow you to know when we have more live stuff coming up, and also when the stuff that we have published is up. It'll show up in your feed so you can watch it. So we hope you do that as well. Jamie, let's get going here. I guess we didn't anticipate we'd have yet another coaching opening since the last time we talked, and Al Washington has taken a job, and so now Notre Dame is looking for a linebackers coach, as well as looking for the defensive backs coach. It's been reported that Illinois defense coach and co-defensive coordinator Aaron Henry will likely be hired as Notre Dame's defensive backs coach. And I know you've done a lot of kind of research on him, and it appears that that's going to be the case, but nothing's official until Notre Dame announces it. But what are your thoughts here on Mr. Henry, and how do you think he fills a role for Notre Dame? Some big shoes to step in when it comes to replacing Mike Mickens.
I think it's a great hire. Like, when you look at who they could have gotten there, I thought about putting him on the original list that I had, but he's their defensive coordinator, so I didn't think we would take another job. I don't think he's done a particularly great job. As the play caller there, but I think a lot of that is the material they've had. But he has done a really good job as a DB coach, and did a really good job as a DB coach before that. Obviously, too, he has the connection to Chris Ash as well. Played for Chris Ash at Wisconsin, was an all Big Ten defensive back there, was hired by Chris Ash at Rutgers to coach cornerbacks. He's coached corners, he's coached safeties. He obviously played safety, so he's coached the full secondary. I think people know that Illinois doesn't recruit at a high level at all. Like, they're not a team that regularly gets a lot of blue chips. Well, he was someone who helped develop a bunch of these guys into high picks there that weren't blue chip recruits. They were really good athletes, but not blue chip recruits. And they had multiple guys. They had 4 guys go on day 1 or day 2 of the NFL draft. Obviously, Devin Witherspoon was a top 5 pick under him. And I think you look at, what he did with that kind of material, and you look at the kind of material Notre Dame has already at defensive back, and you think, wow, that's probably a pretty good match. And also the fact that if you look at Illinois when they were playing that really, really high level defense, when he was just the DB coach there, they were playing a ton of man coverage. And that is what Notre Dame is built to play, a ton of man coverage. They still, even though they mixed in more zone last year than they did previously, they were still a man-heavy team. They're still one of the most man-heavy teams in the country. And you have Leonard Moore and the corners that you have, you're still going to be a man-heavy team. So I think it's a fit, like a scheme fit. Obviously, it's a fit with, he's worked with Ash before and all of that. And just frankly, he's a good coach. Like, it's just, if Oklahoma hired him or Alabama hired him, people would just say, hey, that's a good hire.
So I get the question. A lot of people have said that he may be coming as a co-defensive coordinator. Do you think that's a good idea if he has that name associated with him? And the reason why I ask that is we don't know what Chris Ash is going to do. I've always been concerned about coaches who don't actually move to South Bend. My understanding is he hasn't moved his family there, which in the Al Golden case certainly was a situation where he wasn't at Notre Dame for very long. If let's just say Chris Ash gets a head coaching job, if he gets a NFL job where he's just the defensive coordinator and he may not be able to take some guys with him, um, now you're kind of stuck. So the next guy comes in as a defensive coordinator, you're going to have to say, oh, by the way, we have this other guy who's got a title and he's going to want some say in that. So that's the one thing that kind of stood out to me when I heard that. I thought it was kind of surprising, but they may not even want to do that because, I mean, they may have no problem doing that because he's Chris Asher's guy. So, but I'm thinking more in the future if something were to happen. I guess you could always kind of take the title away, but that's never a good situation either. So, what do you think here about this?
I don't think it's anything. I think it's just a title. Like I think it's like how Mike Mickens was the defensive passing game coordinator. Al Washington was the defensive run game coordinator. It's just more money. That's all it is. Like he's being the co-DC. I'm not saying that he's not going to have a say in what Notre Dame is doing on defense, but everybody kind of knows the co-DC. If like, there's a big difference between being the defensive coordinator and then the co-DC. That is just more money. So the thing is that would it mean something that if they took it away, if they brought in somebody else later on after if Ash left and they had to change that title? Maybe, but I just think that if there's something there, it's not going to change. Like it won't affect any kind of thing if he really wants to be there and is stuck there. But obviously he's taking this hoping that he's probably the next defensive coordinator at Notre Dame, but I think he's got to come in and earn it. And I would say if you're just hiring him based off of what they did at Illinois, he wouldn't have got the job as the defensive coordinator right now, but now he can possibly earn it with, doing well at Notre Dame and see, impressing Marcus Freeman. But I also think too, like, we know Marcus Freeman, he doesn't always pick that guy who's supposed to be next in line on staff. He's gone outside of the box for that. So I think they'll cross that bridge when they get there.
Yeah, and I don't think you want to just elevate somebody on your staff if you don't believe in them. You got to have and I know a lot of people are saying, well, he'll be the next defensive coordinator. Well, how does Marcus know that? I mean, he's never seen him work with one Notre Dame player. He's never seen him in a meeting. He's never had him with any of this type of stuff. And I'm not even sure the guy's even actually physically interviewed at this point. I don't know. I've heard rumors that that's actually happening today. So whether that's true or not, I don't know. But it's just, I think people are getting a little ahead of themselves saying, oh, well, they're lining this up as the next defensive coordinator. Until you actually have experience with a guy, it's really hard to do that. And so I don't want people to get too ahead of themselves when it comes to this. Another question I have for you, Jamie, we're hoping that this is the end of the exodus, of coaches and there aren't any others. We knew about Marty Biaggi in Ohio State, but I'd also heard there's some NFL interest for him. Other coaches on Notre Dame staff have had interest from the NFL. And now you've had another couple coaches leave for the NFL. Is that a problem, do you think, for a head coach? Because I'm just looking at it as, man, all my guys keep leaving. Like if I'm a really good coach, I'd not only have to compete with everybody in college for my guys, now I have to compete with everybody in the NFL for my guys as well. So it's a good problem to have, but I think it's tough. The only guy I've seen who's been able to continually replace quality guys with more quality guys is Nick Saban. And he did a great job, and that's why he had that dynasty for a long, long time. So I think so much of it is who is doing the hiring, because I think if a person has the ability to recognize talent, just like Mike Mickens had recognized talent and Marcus Freeman recognized talent with the coordinators he's hired right now, and if you have a guy who can do that, it's easier than some other guys, but it's tough to continue to lose guys, not only to college, but NFL. It's got to be frustrating for a coach. And again, I think that this is one of the reasons that people are saying, well, the NFL's tough to turn down. Look, everybody that's leaving Notre Dame is going to the NFL. They're not going to other college jobs. And it seems like all these NFL teams are still coming after these college guys, this is not real normal behavior. You know what I mean? Before, you wouldn't get a lot of NFL teams coming after and grabbing a lot of the best college coaches. It was more of a kind of, who do you know, you're in the NFL bubble, we keep recycling those people versus the college guys. But now you're starting to see, and maybe it's just because none of the college guys wanted to be in the NFL because it was so impersonal and all about business, that a lot of guys who enjoy the thing they enjoy the most about coaching and teaching is taking a young guy who isn't developed and teaching him and turning him not only into a great coach, but also a strong guy, a man, and I think a lot of coaches value that. But I don't know. Your thoughts on this?
Well, I think things are so different now than they were even, say, like 10 years ago, or maybe even 10, 15 years ago, where there used to be such a separation between the NFL is this type of game and college is this type of game. And now there's just much more of a blend. It's more of, there isn't this big difference between, people aren't running triple option throughout college football or the wishbone. Now, a lot of stuff like nickel has been based in the NFL for a long time. And then now it's become more of the norm in college football, where that wasn't the case before. It was different. College had it different. And now you see a lot of more spread elements in the NFL compared to what it was before. There's a mesh between pro style and spread and all this kind of stuff, where now it's just offense. There isn't as big of a gap between schemes and all of that. And I think too, one of the things that college coaches did was they started hiring guys who were young from the NFL and bringing like Marcus Freeman, bringing in Al Golden, who wasn't obviously young, but he was a guy who had NFL knowledge and came in and brought that in. And there's just been way more of those guys lately that have come in, and then maybe they'll go back or whatever. So you're bringing in more NFL guys there. You're doing that. You're also getting, if you look at how many guys this hiring cycle, so Jesse Minter, who got hired as the Ravens coach. Well, a few years ago, he was the DC at Michigan. Before that, he was the DC at Vanderbilt. He's 5 years removed from being the DC at Vanderbilt. Now he's a head coach in the NFL at one of the best franchises in the NFL. Jeff Hafley was, he was an assistant on San Francisco 49ers, got hired to run the defense. Ryan Day had coached with him in the NFL, brought him there to be the defensive coordinator, went there, was a head coach at Boston College, went to the NFL, from there became a DC, and now all of a sudden he's the coach of the Miami Dolphins. This guy was the coach of Boston College, wasn't even doing well. For Liam Cohen, same thing. He was Kentucky's offensive coordinator, and then all of a sudden he went to the Rams, got hired there, and then ended up being the coach of Jacksonville Jaguars, and they're doing well. So I think you seeing some of these. It's why people want Marcus Freeman too. They want these young guys with new ideas. They don't want the old stale guys that they're rehiring over and over again. And it's obviously different when it's a John Harbaugh who's had 20 years of success, or those kind of guys. But look at how many of these guys get second chances in the NFL, Mike, who they flamed out after 3 years. And then all of a sudden that guy is a leading candidate for another job. It never makes sense. That's why they see the success of some of these other younger guys. So I think there's that kind of connection of these guys in college. Obviously Al Washington wouldn't have got that job if there wasn't like, he worked with Hafley. So that's why there's that connection. Minter obviously had been in college, knows that there's a lot of guys, knew Mike Mickens was a really, really good coach. And that's how that job is. Like Chris O'Leary, right, is another guy. Obviously, it's crazy to think that like he's Western Michigan's defensive coordinator. Now he's the San Diego
that's crazy.
or the Los Angeles Chargers. But that is how it is now, because there's less of the, hey, you have to be in this league or this is this person's buddy. It's more of like just getting these guys to, it's like, this guy's just a good coach. We're just going to bring him in. So, I think one thing that stands out to me though, Mike, is that you don't see Notre Dame guys go to college jobs. Almost all of those guys have gone to NFL jobs, which I think speaks to like the level of coaches that
I agree. Yes.
Marcus Freeman has brought in. So I think that says a lot about it. But the other thing is that when you're getting these guys and bringing them in, so if you just said, if this was the brand new staff, like Marcus Freeman, this is first year's head coach, and he hired Charlie Partridge and Aaron Henry as his DB coach and defensive line coach, you'd say, wow, those are two really great hires, even without having to replace the next guy. It's just, those are just good hires. So I think, and we'll see how it meshes, because you never know how it's all going to work, whatever.
Yeah.
But just on its face, like on paper, those look like great hires. And I think that's kind of like the same thing with Dalen McCullough going, and then all of a sudden you get Ge Wang Sider. Like, that's kind of what they've done. Like Marcus Freeman has done really, really good job. Like not only getting guys that are probably guys you wouldn't even expect, like, oh, Partridge is going to leave the NFL. He was just in the NFL. He's going to come and take this Notre Dame job. Like Aaron Henry's going to leave the defensive coordinator job to become the DB coach at Notre Dame. Like, that's not something that usually happens, but I think it says a lot about like where Notre Dame's at and also where Marcus Freeman has got them to get them to be able to hire these guys.
Yeah. It is exciting. And I think you are correct in that it says a lot about the quality of coach that Marcus Freeman has both attracted and watched blossom, under his leadership. And, a lot of these guys didn't have NFL ties. So these NFL teams are taking a gamble. Okay? They've never coached. And so, there's a lot of guys who can coach defensive backs in the NFL that have proven they can do that. But I think the fact that so many of these guys are excited about what Notre Dame brings and the coaching there, I think really says a lot about Marcus Freeman, what he's done and how he's identified talent and developed that talent into the things that, even the NFL is very hotly after. And so I just think Irish fans need to get used to this, because with success, this is what it's going to be. And a lot of these coaches, like you mentioned, that Notre Dame has hired are young guys, and a lot of people are looking for that right now. And so we got to hope that they can hold on to some of these for quite some time. Let's get to the linebackers coach. What we have now is 2 Ash hires, really. Certainly with Ash connections. Do you think we'll see that again with what we'll see at linebacker?
I don't think so, just because I don't know if there is like an Ash guy that is there that it would be like qualified, that is an obvious candidate. So I'm not saying that they wouldn't look at that if there was somebody there, but there just really isn't anyone where it's just a fact that Chris Ash has coached a lot of guys that from that Wisconsin teams that he coached that became coaches and work for him or have worked and been prominent coaches at Power 4 schools. And it hasn't been that at linebacker, it's just funny where it's like Notre Dame, there isn't like a ton of DB coaches that were like have Notre Dame connection, but there's actually a lot that are linebacker coaches that do. So, yeah, I mean, and it's not to say it's going to be a guy with the direct Notre Dame connection, but I just think there isn't as an obvious of a fit there for someone. There isn't really someone too that, if you go back and look at, because Freeman was a linebacker coach. So it wasn't like, he had Max Bulla, who was like a GA at Cincinnati, whatever. And it kind of made sense to bring him in. But other than like James Laurinaitis, there isn't another guy who has a direct line to like, oh, he coached with Marcus Freeman before, right? Like, because he always coached linebackers, right? So, I don't know. I think that makes it more interesting because they're probably going to hire somebody that isn't, whether they have a Notre Dame connection or not, that doesn't have a direct connection. So he's really going to, interview people and hire who he thinks is the best guy.
Yeah, I agree. I didn't really see anybody that kind of fits the Ash mold. That somebody who's got experience with him. It was funny. I was talking to Matt yesterday when we were talking about Henry, and we were talking about the linebacker coach situation, and he had mentioned that he had heard Mo Crum was very heavily being pursued by Notre Dame. Maurice Crum, the former Notre Dame linebacker. And Matt had mentioned that I guess his wife wasn't overly keen on leaving at this particular point for where they were at because they have a young son. And I kept saying to myself, gosh, they're not a young son, but they got a son who's, going to be 16. And it's hard to pull kids out of high school when they're doing this. And I kept thinking to myself, man, how old am I that Mo Crum now has a 16-year-old kid? It's like, my Lord, this is crazy. And then I started thinking to myself, well, I got a 16-year-old kid, so I guess it's not really that crazy. And I never thought Will would reach 16. It's just time flies. But, I would love for Notre Dame to get some Notre Dame spirit back into this, with some former players who are quality coaches. We know about Mo, we know Greer Martini, things like that, some of those types of guys. But I don't know. I don't know. I think it right now, because there is no obvious thing, this one may take a little bit before we know exactly. I think a lot of people were hoping, well, we'll hear this week, and maybe they will. Maybe they will bring somebody in and it's immediate and that's the way it is. But if there isn't anybody, it may take us a little bit of time before we find out who it actually is. I know somebody said the Vandy linebacker coach. I think they're talking about Lazinski. I don't think that he's a target. I really don't. I know that other people have posted this, and there's been a lot of kind of stuff that's gone on behind the scenes with some of people that follow this like we do, saying names and stuff and kind of going hardcore on, oh yeah, this is the guy, and the interesting thing is we're all sitting here at ISD shaking our head going, where are they getting this information? This does not connect with everything that we've heard about this. And it's like Matt on Saturday night comes out and says, the name I'm hearing is kind of surprising. It'll be a surprise if that's the guy. And obviously this is Henry was what he was talking about. But I don't know. I think it's going to take a little bit of time, and it may not be as obvious as a lot of people think when it's all said and done. And that's probably not a bad thing. Marcus Freeman's brought in a lot of guys that we weren't necessarily sure that was going to be the guy, and they've turned out to be very, very good coaches. And again, I think that that's one thing that he does have a very big strength of is identifying who can be successful and who can't be. And that's a big, big part of being a head coach. And so that's why he's been so successful. Do you think it's going to be, it isn't like a situation before with Ash where, that happened even later and he had to make a quick decision. There's plenty of time between now and spring practice to bring somebody in. And let's be honest, whoever this guy is going to be is going to have some really teaching moments, because he's going to have a lot of young guys that he's going to have to develop. We don't expect Derek Bowen and Jalen Sneed to play a whole lot because they're older. Drake had his injury that we know about, and I'm sure they want to rest him. And Sneed, they don't need to teach him a whole lot of stuff either at this point. Obviously, KVA isn't going to be playing, so you got guys, on the team right now who are going to have a great opportunity. And Jaden Osbury, Kahanu Kia, Teddy Rizak, Adam Ferramo, Koakia. Those are the guys who are going to have a great opportunity. So whoever this guy is going to have to hit the ground running, and he's going to be in charge of really kind of getting that second string ready to go for the season. And so it'll be interesting to see who it is, and he'll have a task ahead of him because we fully expect a lot of those young players will get the majority of the reps this spring, and so it should be exciting to see. Do you think that that's an issue at all? Kind of coming in late, don't have a really great relationship with these guys. You go right into spring practice, and you're trying to coach up a bunch of people, and you're probably not even really familiar with the defense at this point because you were running something, I assume, different at Illinois. Your thoughts?
I don't think that's going to be a big thing, especially because with Henry, like, he's already worked for Ash. It's not just like he played for Ash. It's like, well, he knows what kind of coach he is because of playing for him, but he also was like worked directly for him. And just when there's that kind of relationship, when you've actually worked for the guy, this guy's been your boss before, you're going to have like that part makes that transition that much easier, right? To know like, hey, maybe I can speak up here, or maybe no, this is not my place to do this. So I think that part of it, and anyone who's going to come in, it's going to be like an adjustment. But everything becomes easier when you have veteran players that can like help ease that transition. And even when you're saying with the linebackers, if like Bowen, yeah, we know he's going to be limited in spring, and Sneed, how much is he going to practice? Who knows? Osbury, whatever, just having those guys around, that makes the transition easier because in a way they're kind of, although they're adapting to the new coach, they're also kind of working with that new coach and teaching them, and they're like learning together of how it kind of fits. And it'd be a lot different if it was all young guys. If that situation where, if you look at say 2024, Mike, and that was when Kaiser was the only vet, everybody else was young, I think that would be like a much harder situation to walk into for like a brand new position coach, because even though you're getting those guys and it's like a ball of clay, it's like, well, you're coming into a new defense. These guys are also new and they're learning, and there just could be like a big learning curve, but I don't think it's going to be nearly as big with just, those guys kind of knowing the defense and stuff already.
When you look at the defensive commitment list so far at 2027, you've got Amari Irvin, you've got Khalil Terry, you've got Ace Alston, and Xavier Hassan. Those are the 4 defensive prospects committed. By the way, they're linebackers and defensive backs. So obviously they're going to have to make a concerted effort right away to try and solidify those guys. I think when you look at I guess when you look at the with Aaron Henry, he has some established, situations where he's developed players, and I think that'll happen. Plus, Marcus Freeman has done a good job of getting down there and talking to those guys and saying, "Hey, we got, we know what we're doing here. You're going to be okay." Same thing with Irvin. So I don't think it's going to be an issue, but again, that's the one thing you kind of worry about. And boy, I'd hate to lose any of those guys. I love all 4 of those guys. I think all 4 of them are really, really talented players. And so I think that's got to be a priority. You got to keep these guys locked in, and hopefully that's the issue. And nobody waivers or anything like that, because I think all 4 of those guys are really talented players. Your thoughts here?
Yeah. And I think one of the reasons they lost Ivan Taylor in that class was because Chris O'Leary left. Right. And it's funny because, people were concerned about Chris O'Leary and, he didn't recruit well enough and whatever. And it's like, well, if he was there, then they probably would have landed Ivan Taylor, and I don't think he would have left the class. So, I'm sure like a big reason why Hassan, for example, like committed was because of Mickens. I think this is the part where, someone like Carter Allman, is keeping relationships with all these guys. In a way, he's like selling Henry as much as more than Henry could sell himself before that too. So that is obviously a key thing, and just, doing all that. And I think the one thing, there's so much of a trust, not just with the players, but also like the parents of the players, and knowing like what they think of Marcus Freeman, that'd be so much different if Marcus Freeman is gone. I think if they had like a class, like say they had like a top 5 class all ready to go, and then Marcus Freeman right a week before signing they left, I think it would just be devastating the whole class. Like no one would sign and it would be bad, right? But like,
yeah,
I think that is the kind of thing that would be different. Obviously, you have work to do, but we'll see. I think, I mentioned that the Ivan Taylor one, well, they kept everybody else out of that group. It was just him, right? So you just hope that they can, keep as many of the guys as possible.
Yeah. All right. Well, I tell you what, Jamie, we got lots of questions from customers here we want to get to. If you have some questions in the chat, we'll get to those as well. I just kind of wanted to get through these. We don't usually do enough of these, so I want to get through as many as we can. Given the coaches changes, are you still very confident on how good this team can be this season? We'll start with you, Jamie.
Yes, extremely confident. I just think if the coaches don't do a good enough job, like obviously it could fall apart. But one, I think they hired good, he's hired good coaches so far. We'll see what happens at the linebacker coach. I think they'll probably hire another good coach there. And the players are too good. It's like they're bringing in coaches to coach these players that are already good. It would be much different if it was like a rebuilding situation where, like I said, with the 2024, it's like, well, you got all these new guys. It's like, nah, you got a whole bunch of established guys already. So they're still going to be set up very well.
Yeah, I think that everything should be fine. I just like the chemistry of the team. I like that one of your biggest leaders is going to be your quarterback, and the fact that your quarterback's damn good, that always helps. That helps a tremendous amount. So Notre Dame hasn't had that in a while. I shouldn't say that. They had that with Riley Leonard, but it took a while for Riley Leonard. And then once he kind of earned his own, stripes and said, look, guys, I'm a playmaker too, follow me. Then everybody followed him, and that was great. But I think with CJ Carr, it's going to be right out of the gate this year. Everybody knows what he is and what he can do. Plus, you're going to have some big-time receivers now, some guys that are developed and ready to go. And so I'm excited about what this year is going to be. All right. Since Matt isn't coming on Power Hour anytime soon, can you address the rumors he's leaving for Bengals Sports Daily or becoming a full-time member or model for ESQ? None of that is true, at least right now. Although I don't know, maybe a model that could possibly happen. It could possibly happen.
Well, he is friends with the owner, so
he is very good friends with the owner.
Maybe that's his way to get in. Yeah.
Notice nobody asked me to be a model. That never happened. So, all right. Do you think Jugasa will be back for spring ball or summer strength and conditioning? This has been a topic that's been on the boards a lot. And I don't know that we know the absolute facts of things. And so it's hard to say the absolute facts of things, but my understanding, allegedly, there was some complications with his surgery, and they had to fix some things. So I'm going to guess we won't see Jugasa this spring. I really don't think we will. If we do, it'd be very, very light, I would guess. Probably more spring, summer is what I think we'll see. Is that disappointing? Well, yes, it's very, very disappointing. And unfortunately, that's been the situation with Charles the entire way. He's been injured the entire way. Vastly, vastly talented. We just got to hope that he can get some luck and not put himself in bad situations. That's exactly what happened there. It's easy to criticize somebody. I remember what I was as a 20-year-old kid. I didn't have millions of dollars on the writing on it, but I mean, I was an idiot, Jamie. I just was. And I had the no fear gene. I rode motorcycles, my entire life as a little kid, and I would jump anything, and I just didn't care. I had the no fear gene, and so it's easy to judge somebody that's when you're 60 years old, or I'm not 60, but when you get to be older like us, it's easy to judge somebody when you have all this wealth of knowledge. I was a complete idiot at 20. I just was.
Well,
I assume Uyeyama was close to an idiot. You weren't probably as bad as me.
I
but-
mean, I'm sure everyone has had things where it's like, you jumped off something, a roof or something you shouldn't have done or whatever. You were doing dumb things when you're, 20 years old. It's bad luck that it went down the way it did. But I will say, if you look at, some of it was more self-inflicted with Kevin Austin because obviously he got, suspended and all that. So that was like part of it with him. But I think one of the things with Kevin Austin was he missed so much time during his career because of that and because of injury. And now Jagisel's pretty much the same. Like he's barely played. He has barely played. He's going into his 4th year and he's barely practiced really because he's missed a lot of time. So, yes, he's crazy talented, but to think that he'll just go and we'll plug him in. He's going to be this. It's like, well, let's see how it is. I don't know. You root for him. You hope that it works out. Obviously, it would be great if it works out for Notre Dame because he can be an absolute stud.
Oh, absolutely.
But I
when
just
he
think
was
that
healthy, he was great there at the
He was
end.
great.
I mean, he really was. It was exactly what I thought he would be. He was exactly what I thought he would be. And I love the fact that he was at guard because I really do think that's his best position. I think he could play tackle. He could play either tackle and he'd do just fine. But I just think he's such a dominant player, so physical and can move so well that if you have the tackles, you want to play him there. And when he was playing there, man, he was just a monster. That Penn State game, man, he was just a monster. And so, again, the talent is there. We've seen it before. We just got to hope he gets healthy and I'm sure they're going to treat him with kid gloves and not put him in any situations where he could possibly screw something up because he's that valuable to him. So I'd be surprised that he does much of anything. Now, a guy wants to know, can Jamie give an abbreviated film eval on Richie Flanagan now that he's an O-line recruit instead of a D-line recruit? Or does he even have O-line film for Jamie to review?
he does
spend some.
yeah. I was going to say this is a good idea, and I should probably do something on the site for it. So, I'll have something on that this week. Didn't even think about it, to be honest, but that makes total sense that people would want to see that. So, look for something this week.
Yeah. Okay. I think, I just love his attitude. The kid's just a nasty player, just like Halter.
Yeah.
Nasty. That's what they need. So,
and I think like his brother, James, obviously, is his tight end. Like, watch his film on defense too. The guy's just a good football player. Like,
totally.
He gets after.
He could be. He could be a great defensive.
I
end.
absolutely think they could move him to defensive end, and he would be a stud. Like he could
absolutely.
play in the NFL.
I agree 100%. 100%.
I think it's the same kind of thing with Richie, where if they played him on defense, they played him on offense, he's going to be a good football player.
Yeah. All right. I see this question in here. I'll answer it real quick. I wanted to know who I used to play a song on Power Hour called Bonnie and Clyde. That was by a band named Luna, in case you want to look that up. Luna is the name of the band. Very cool band. All right. Let's see. Want to know where they are in the coaching hire, and they want to know if it's going to be this week, meaning the linebackers coach. We've already kind of addressed that. I don't think that they're in the let's bring somebody in interview process yet. I think they're in the investigation process. I think that they were going to, I think if Mo Crum was interested, they probably would have had him on campus this week. I'm sure they're on to who they're looking at as well, and they may not give up on Mo Crum. You never know what they're going to do. But again, I think that they're kind of in the investigation part of things, trying to solidify a pecking order and get their guy in to interview first, and we'll see how that all unfolds. Again, a guy was asking about so many guys leaving for the NFL versus college program. He wants to know what we think of that. And, is it a good thing? We've kind of also addressed that a little bit, I think. I do think it's a good thing. I think it really says a lot.
More of a good thing
Marcus
than a bad
Freeman.
thing, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, it sucks you're losing quality talent, but I tell you this, I would rather that quality talent go to the NFL than Mickens at USC or at Ohio State,
yeah.
or
Oh yeah.
you know what I mean. So we would much rather that be the case every single time. So here's an interesting thing. This has been rumbling out there. What are your thoughts on predictions of leaving the ACC for the Big Ten or SE as partial members? All just speculation. Also, what's your biggest concerns going into next season? I've been hearing this rumblings. I don't. I think. I think what I would say is that I'm sure Notre Dame has done everything they can to investigate opportunities. And the reason they would do that is obviously the ACC was not very friendly to their partner. And so my guess is Notre Dame did a lot of investigation here in this offseason as to what options may be. Now, that may mean that they do absolutely nothing. And they may look at the financial situation and say, well, we would have to pay a penalty and there's nowhere we're going to go. Or they may look at it and say, well, we looked at this and we just don't think it's the right time to do anything. There's a lot of things that could happen, but I would both. I tend to believe that they have done this investigation based off of things that I've heard, but I don't believe that means that they're leaving. They're going to leave, or that anything is imminent at this point. It could be, but I don't think that that it's anywhere near to that point where it's like something's going to happen. Again, I've heard this. I don't know it for a fact that they looked into things. Where that went, what it's going to amount, I really have no clue. But I do know from many different sources that Notre Dame was very upset by the treatment that they got from their ACC partner, and I don't blame them. And I would be very disappointed if they didn't investigate. I think it's time for Notre Dame to sit there and throw their weight around in that conference and say, look, we're the only thing that's giving you any credibility right now other than Miami. And obviously Miami, had a good season, but Miami wouldn't even got in if they didn't play Notre Dame because you didn't have a quality win. There was nobody worth a crap in your AC schedule unless it was Notre Dame. And the fact that, I love the fact that Pete's out there flexing, saying, hey, look, every time we play in any stadium, it's almost always sold out or damn near sold out. You go any other time, it's 40% capacity. And that says everything. And Notre Dame should be throwing their weight around, not just in whether we're going to leave or not, but, oh, you want us to schedule this time right now? No. You want us to use this? No, we're not doing that. If Notre Dame doesn't want to do it, they shouldn't do it. So Notre Dame has a lot more clout in this than I think a lot of people understand. And half the reason they have the TV deal that they do have in the ACC is because Notre Dame's going to be, part of the broadcast on some of those games. And so that's why TV networks are excited about Notre Dame being in that conference. But there would be a lot of other places that would be excited about it too. Thoughts here?
I mean, I've heard the things about them, looking at other partnerships, and I think it makes sense for them to do it anyways, because if they don't do that, they'll have to join one of them, right? Like that's just what it is. So if they're kind of could be proactive about it, I would think that one of the things that it's funny because the Big Ten, they want to get those automatic qualifiers and all that. Maybe they would want less of that if Notre Dame was like a partial member. Because that it's just another kind of thing that adds to their like TV inventory if they got that. Personally, I think even though I get it, like I despise the Big Ten and I think Tony Petitti's doing a terrible job as their commissioner. Everything they're doing, like he should have pushed for USC to keep that rivalry. That it lessens the value of USC to not have that game. So I don't understand why he wouldn't have been pushing that too. I do think that a partnership would just make so much more sense with the Big Ten though, because there's so many more natural rivals for Notre Dame there that they've played over the years. So like this year, Notre Dame's playing Michigan State and Purdue. And I know people don't get too excited, like Notre Dame fans don't get too excited about those games, but those are traditional rivals. Those are close games. Those are games where if you think about like the wear and tear of a season, if you got to go to East Lansing, or you got to go to Purdue, like those aren't long trips. You're not like, it's a lot different than going to Starkville, Mississippi State. So I think there's just so many things where like, Michigan, USC, obviously, even
so
Indiana,
many you can drive to.
There's so
many
many
you can drive to.
Yeah.
You can drive to Northwestern. You can drive to Wisconsin. You can drive to Michigan. You can drive to Michigan State. You can drive to Ohio State. You can drive to Indiana, Purdue, even Nebraska, although it sucks because I've done it so many times. So, there's a lot of different teams you could drive to and not have to fly. And that makes sense. It really does.
Yeah. And I just think too, traditionally that it makes sense because there's a lot of those were like long-standing rivalries that got kind of taken away. And if you played them every, few years or whatever, or you had a rotation of those, I think that would be pretty good for Notre Dame and for those. I mean, be great for those schools. I'm sure like Michigan State would love to have Notre Dame on their schedule every year again.
Yeah. I think that if they were to make a jump, that would make the most sense. But and most importantly, you want to make the jump when you can control things, not when you're forced to do something.
Yeah.
And that's my worry about when the ACC happens and implodes, which it's going to happen. There's just no doubt about it. I will be shocked if it's around in 5 years. I just will be. And what you don't want to do is come to the table where you're like, will you accept this? So I think you want to go in there with a strong hand, and now is a good time to have that strong hand. But again, I don't think that anything is imminent based off anything I've heard. I could be dead wrong. But I do think it was something that a lot of people were interested in and were digging around to find out what options were available at this time. And so, we'll see what happens. But I think I speak for a lot of Notre Dame fans, certainly not all of them, but I would like nothing better than Notre Dame to be the thing that blows up the ACC, because I really think that they've been a very bad partner. What they did this last year was just atrocious, I think, considering all the things that Notre Dame has done for them and helped them and accommodated for them. And so I think that, and don't get me wrong, Notre Dame has benefited from this relationship too. So it is a two-way street, but there is a lot of things that have happened that I got a problem with. So it just is what it is. All right, let's see. What will Notre Dame do with the remaining 4 roster spots? Well, I think you'll see a lot of walk-on stuff coming at this point. They got a lot of guys that they've already got as scholarship players and this and that. And I'd assume it'll just be, the traditional walk-ons they have. Anything you want to add, Jamie?
Yeah, I think no, I don't even think there is anything to add. I'm pretty sure it'll be preferred walk-ons that get those spots. And I don't know if it'll be someone, it wouldn't be someone who, like a Luke Talek or anything like that, like who was there. It would be someone else who's, probably some kind of legacy or something like that. But like a lot of those guys end up being like pretty valuable guys to the team. So, I'm sure they have people in mind already.
Oh, I'm sure. Absolutely. Speaking of in the chat there, folks, if you have any questions you want us to answer, feel free to ask the questions. We're going to answer a few more here. And if there's any left in chat, we'll get to those. So feel free to ask your questions and Greg will pop them up and Jamie and I will hit them when they pull up.
Mike, there's like a general discussion going on again about Joe Rudolph and how he's performed in the last, I guess, 3 years. And I think it's a nuanced discussion about, like, in my opinion, I think there's a middle ground between a bad coach and a great coach. And I think he's in there. So if you guys want to get to that at some point, because that's kind of what's topical in the chat, or that was topical in the chat a second ago. Not really any bashing, just kind of like Mickens and Washington are moving on to other jobs, and it doesn't seem like Rudolph is really being sought after by other opportunities. So people are just asking questions about why is that? Could Notre Dame upgrade at the O-line position?
I mean, I think first of all, O-line coaches, they tend to stick around a lot of times. They do. They don't tend to jump from opportunity to opportunity. You don't see a lot of them become offensive coordinators. Some do, but you don't see it a ton. You usually see more of the glory positions take over the OC role. So a lot of times, O-line coaches just kind of stick around. As for the job that he's done, I think he's done a really good job with the talent he's had. Could they recruit better? Yeah, I think that they could. I do. And I'm just being honest about that. I think that they've recruited some really good players. Don't get me wrong. I think right now on the roster, there's some really, really good players. But I think that there's a level of this guy has huge upside, right? And then there's another level of players that are just kind of under them. You don't see the three, really high 4-star, 5-star guys in the class like some other places you may see. Now, when you look at it, that is a situation where I think a lot of head coach or a lot of O-line coaches are very much about they have to be their types of players, right? And I think what you've seen with Joe Rudolph is you're starting to see meaner, nastier players showing up. And for me, I love that. Everybody knows that I absolutely love that. But I also want to see the athleticisms of some of the best teams that are out there. And I think that they've got some of those guys, certainly. Obviously Will Black's a guy who can move very well. McHugh can move. There's guys who can really move that are exciting. But for me, I would like to see another big time impact. I want to see 2 5-stars every year, because if you're playing for national championships and you're in the playoff consistently, Notre Dame should be able to do that. O-linemen are always the smartest guys, when it comes to academics and ACT and SAT, always the smartest guys. So it's never a problem of, well, I shouldn't say never. There's certainly guys that can't get in, but the vast, vast majority of them can get in compared to some of the other positions. And so I do think that you could do a better job of landing some of the players. We'll see what happens now. I mean, you look at like Jordan Halter and everybody talks about, well, is he a high 4-star player, or James Halter, not Jordan Halter. Is he a high 4-star player, blah, blah, blah. Well, he may not be a 5-star player, but I think he's got that kind of potential. So I'm okay with that, right? I'm okay with that. I like Richie Flanagan. I think he's going to be a really good player. I love his nastiness and this and that. But I hope that they can bring in an elite, 5-star guy in this class. And I think you should be able to get one of those every year if you're winning and doing the types of things that you want to. Your thoughts here, Jamie?
Yeah, I think it's hard to get 2 5-star guys on the offensive line now compared to what it might have been earlier, just because some of those guys get like more money than anybody else, because it's like there's such a scarcity of them. So if you look at, say, guys like Jackson Cantwell this year and Felix Ojo, those are 2 guys that Ojo was like going to visit Notre Dame, but then they like the visit got canceled. I mean, one of the reasons was because he was like asking for ridiculous. It would have just and obviously that's why you ended up at Texas Tech. Like he didn't go there because they had another Joe Moore disciple as the offensive line coach. He went there to get some money. And same with Jackson Cantwell. Went to Miami. Obviously, they do a good job on the offensive line there, but he went there because of the money, right? Like that's what it is. So it's hard to get multiple guys like that. And I think they've done a really good job of like evaluating and finding guys that maybe weren't considered 4-star or 5-star or like top 100 guys that became that. And I think I could see that with Halter for sure. But that's like Will Black is a perfect example.
Sure.
He wasn't that. And then same thing with Grayson McKeel this year, like all that. And I think they've done a good job of evaluations general. I think he's done a good job overall as the offensive line coach. I do think whatever, it's totally fine for fans to want better and stuff. And there was always that thought with like Harry Keystan and stuff as well, like that, was a consistent thing where people always had that kind of question. It's like, well, they develop all these players, but they're never like dominant or not dominant enough for that people wanted to see. One of the things though is that the last 2 years at Notre Dame, I haven't even seen 2 years where they've had that kind of injuries specifically to the interior of the offensive line, where it's like all 3 guys get hurt. Like, when does that happen, Mike? I can't remember another year where left guard, right guard, center hurt, like injured, like out for the year or out for multiple games. That happened that often. That doesn't happen, especially back-to-back years. So that obviously is going to have an impact on how well you can play, right? So we'll see. I think talent-wise, it's probably going to be this year. I think it's probably going to be the best year, like just straight up where I'd say like their top 8 guys talent. I think is probably better than any other year that he's had, just from 1 to 8. Maybe not, there isn't a Joe Alt, but just 1 to 8. I think it's better. So I'm pretty optimistic about how good they can be this year, but we'll see.
It's interesting. I was reading Raymond Harton's thing in here, and he's talking about how recruiting hasn't been a problem, but every week they're complaining about Wagner, they're complaining about Knapp, they're complaining. You know what I mean? It's like, well, wait a minute. What do you mean talent isn't the issue? I mean, those are the guys that are playing, and guess what? They're not hurt, and you're complaining about it. So every week you're complaining about our guys are not good enough out there on the tackle situation. And I seen that he said, oh, well, you need to move the quality tackles that you have, stop playing them at guard. And it's like, what do you think that Sullivan Absher is going to play better than Knapp? No, I mean, he's just not. If he was, he's going to be there. I mean, Joe Rudolph has coached more offensive line than any of us, by a long shot, by millions of years. And so he knows who the best players are, and he's putting them in those positions to succeed. And he's done that for his whole entire career, whether it was here or Wisconsin or wherever he was. He's done that his whole entire career. And he is going to know where the best talent is and where to place them for sure. So to me, I look at it, I say, these guys are talented players. They are. And look, Miami gave everybody fits. It wasn't just Notre Dame that had problems.
Butt.
Exactly. Yeah. Indiana that struggled with them too. Everybody did. Indiana won, but they also had other things that were helping them win that Notre Dame was not able to do in that game. And again, that's because you got the first year that, of a offensive, quarterback and a lot of things were happening and your offensive line is kind of patchwork because you're getting guys hurt. And so, I think for when you look at what Rudolph has done, right, considering all the injuries that he's had, you plug a guy in there and it may be a game or two before that guy is really, competent, but you put Joe Otting in there and the first game wasn't very good. Second game, he starts to play a lot better. Third game, same thing. And then he gets hurt again, and he's out there playing because he's hurt. And everybody's like, well, Joe Otting stinks. It's like, no, he's hurt. He's hurt. That's the problem. And there just wasn't anybody else they could put in there at that point. So same thing with a lot of these coaches. You just can't have that many injuries to have this happen. And do I think that they've been elite? They've been pretty good, man. If you can get to the final game and do pretty well against Ohio State, that was a good front four that Ohio State had. All those guys are going to be in the NFL. All of them are going to probably stick in the NFL for a very, very long time. So if you can do that well, you're doing pretty well. And I think the same thing would have happened this year if Billy didn't get hurt and Ashton Craig didn't get hurt and Charles Jugasaw didn't get hurt. And then on top of that, Joe Otting got hurt later. Knapp was kind of banged up at times, so all these things, it's hard to overcome all that. And so I don't think that he has been the greatest offensive line in the entire world? No, I don't think so. But I think he's been pretty darn good, and I'm not sure there's too many others out there that would have done a better situation. I think that the thing that I look at coaches when I do this, the thing that I look at coaches is when they have to put in their subs, what does that look like?
Yeah.
That's how I evaluate.
And they've played pretty
coaches.
well.
Exactly. When you have to put the subs in, that tells me whether you're a quality coach or not, because everybody's got starters that are pretty good. They just got talent. Not everybody, but when you're playing at Notre Dame, you should have guys that are pretty good. It's when you put the subs in, do they know what they're doing? And, the second string. And that's why everybody thought Mickens was a great coach, because he could just put somebody in there and that guy would come in and perform at a pretty high level. So, I think we're I think we're kind of picking at things, and sometimes this isn't completely in his ability to fix, because you got so many guys that are hurt. All right. Any chances Burgess can crack the defensive tackle rotation? He has a talent, seems to put on some serious weight this year. What do you think?
I think there's a definite chance. Like I know they're excited about his potential. I'm excited about his potential. I think they they updated some weights on the website, and he's listed at 299 pounds. He obviously looks it. Anyone who's seen any of the workout videos, he looks like big. He looks good. So, I'm excited to see him, and see what he can do there. He's obviously got a ton of potential. He's got a ton of potential. So, that's someone that he would definitely be someone to watch out for. And I think he's different than a lot of the other guys they have, to be honest, too, right? Like I think he's got where Francis Brew is obviously a twitchy guy, but he's like a undersized twitch. I think Burgess has some of that twitch, but obviously he's bigger and like a bigger frame and stuff too. I'm really excited to see what he can do.
Can't wait for next year with him. He'll have that man strength next year, and man, look out. I think it's going to be fun to watch. All right. Guy wants to know, since Aaron Henry was not a real, not really possible pull for our DB coach, is there a linebacker guy you could see something kind of similar happening with? I don't know. Again, we've heard a few names, whether or not they're actual legit names. And I just want to be honest. The way we run this, and I know sometimes it gets frustrating to people, is we don't go out there and just throw a bunch of crap out there. We just don't. And that's by design. I don't want my guys to do that. I don't want them to put out a bunch of names and act like, oh yeah, well, this guy's close. And then all of a sudden when that doesn't happen, there's some excuse as to why it didn't happen. We don't do that, right? We try and let everybody know, here's what we hear. And then when it gets close to something happening, then we say something. But guess what? When we say it's legit. It's legit stuff. And that's the way we've always operated. So we're not going to just throw a bunch of names out there and just say, okay, well, we've heard this and heard this, until it gets to the point where there's something that's legit happening. That's when we're going to say something. And I don't think we're at that point yet. And again, Jamie's put out names that he think could be a possibility. Some of those we do believe are a possibility. Some we're just not sure at this point, because usually the way the process goes is they single in on one guy, right? And they look at that one guy and they say, can we get him in here? Is he interested? And then he's the guy. And then if he doesn't take it, then they move on to the next guy. So until they get to that point, it's hard to really know who it is. And so I don't think that we're going to know until, my guess is probably next couple of days, a name will surface that seems more likely than others. And then you'll start to hear that, I think, is what will happen. But until that we get to that point, I just don't think that we're really going to know. Anything you want to add?
Well, usually when it's a guy that is kind of like, like a surprise guy that is like you didn't expect to come, that doesn't leak until right before. And that's the kind of thing where, Matt had heard about Henry like the night before, that it was all,
they were
like,
shocked.
Yes.
They were shocked that he knew. They were shocked.
So that's the kind of thing that it usually happens that way, because one, if they are interested in that guy, well, they don't want the other program to come over the top and say, okay, well, now we're going to offer you this and whatever. They're like, it's everything's done on the slide because they're trying to steal that guy away from another program or, or whatnot. So, if it is one of these people that, I mean, I couldn't even name you someone, because usually there is no one who has that direct connection. It would just be someone who's like a big name. I guess I could just list like 5 really high profile linebacker coaches or whatever, but it could just be one of those guys because that we don't know. But I mean, I think we could say we wouldn't be surprised by any of it, because I think no one thought Mike Denbrock was going to come. It's like, well, didn't he just agree to an extension? No, but I just mean, but even before that, Mike, like there was a thought like, he'd be interested, but he did agree with extension. And then all of a sudden we heard, well, he hasn't signed it yet. And then we're like, oh, okay. And then all of that, right? But it was like not something when the job first opened up that people thought, well, it's an automatic, Mike Denbrock was going to come. And then obviously as it went along and you reported like that was a thing. Like this is a real thing when other people were saying it was not, right? And Mike wouldn't have put it out there if it wasn't a real thing, and it was. But it's the same thing with Sider, right? Where that wasn't expected, and then boom, right? And I would say too, like even Charlie Partridge, like by the time that like we knew well ahead of time that Al Washington was going to be the linebackers coach well before it was named. So that's why we kind of knew about Charlie Partridge before, because it was around that they had a time to do that. But if we had to put out that list early on, I wouldn't even have put Charlie Partridge on it, because I would have been like, oh, he's not going, he's not taking the job. Like, and so it can happen that way. And I think Marcus Freeman has proven that he's been able to kind of pull guys like that. So we'll see. Well,
that's going to be it, folks. I hope you enjoyed that, and I do think that they're in great shape. I love Partridge. I love this hire as well. I'm sure they're going to be fine at linebacker, and so like we've talked many times, it sometimes just a new voice just is a good thing. It just is, and so I'm sure these guys are going to be excited to work with the new guys. I'm sure they're going to be upset to lose their old guys, because I do know Al Washington was very well liked. Mike was very well liked by his players. It's hard to do that, but I do think that when you look at the pedigree of who, got to feel, if you were one of those players, okay, I feel like I'm in pretty good hands here. Marcus did a good job of putting us in good hands with somebody who knows what they're doing, and they have a proven track record of developing college players and making them into NFL players. And more importantly, listening to the NFL players, especially Partridge, all the NFL players talk about how important he was in their development. I mean, if I'm a D-line guy, I'd be like, man, because there were a bunch of guys who came out and said, oh man, this guy's, fantastic at what he does. And so again, I think they're in great shape. That's going to be it, folks. I hope you enjoyed that. We will talk to you next week on Power Hour.